Good afternoon, and thank you to everyone who has joined our webinar today. My name is Katie, and I will be moderating our webinar today. Before we get started, let me go ahead and introduce you to our host today. Today, we are going to be presented to by Dr. Karen Love, who is a professor at Judson University and has been a professor for 19 years. And as you can see on the screen there, she is quite an accomplished lady. In addition to being the chair of the organizational leadership program at Judson University, she is also the co-chair of the Love Family Christian Foundation and the founder of both Friday Night Chats as well as the Game Changers Academy. So we are absolutely delighted to have her here with us today. And I'm sure you are going to learn quite a bit about leading high performance teams. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Dr. Love so she can get the party started. Dr. Love, over to you.
Thank you, Katie, for the introduction. I am very honored to be here today and to share some of my experiences with you in terms of leading high performance teams. As Katie indicated, I am the program chair for organizational leadership, and I run a foundation as well. So things are kind of hectic, and I see teams in various ways, in very diverse ways, and I also see challenges in very diverse ways. So we have to come up with a strategy as to how we will approach teams. Now, I want you to take a few minutes and imagine within your organizational structure, there is an individual who's a star performer. When you look at the P&L in terms of this star performer and bringing revenue in, he does it very, very well. But this member is also a team member. And so this is what you're dealing with, the participants of the members of this team. Always late, very dominant in the discussions, takes control over the conversations and never allow anyone to speak into the process or even the challenges or even how to solve problems. Do you know this individual? Yes, I think we all know this individual. Now, when we look at this individual, we think, well, what is he doing wrong? And I don't mean he in a pejorative sense, so please excuse me, I'm just using it generically. But this individual, what if we sort of monetize what's happening with the team? So if you think as a CEO and you think about your benefits and you're monetizing them and you break them down into an hourly rate, let's look at what the revenue has been and is negatively impacted by. Number one, the hours lost because of productivity. The team members does not contribute anything to the conversations. Number two, the lost opportunity that the leader has lost because of the fact that he's not addressing the issues. What about the impact of losing people? The impact of losing that human intelligence and those things that they can contribute within the process to make the team run more effectively, thus increasing the revenue, increasing the margins with the corporation. Well, if you've ever dealt with an individual that way, and I'm sure we all have, I've listed certain types of attributes of an ineffective team. You see that, let's use this example that I've just given you, a decrease in team performance. You're looking at the P&Ls. Well, wait a minute, this individual is definitely doing his job, but in terms of innovation and solving team problems and discussing things about the future, it's not there. What about the lost productivity going forward? Because something is happening within the culture of your organization that has not been addressed. So the number, monetize this, an increased number in team complaints, the confusion about assignments and roles in relationships as well. There has not been a criteria set. You have not gone through the storming process where you get to know each other and understand the contributions you can bring to the table. So thus the team is ineffective. And now look at the bottom here, this bottom list, lack of initiative, creativity, and effective problem solving. When you have an individual, a very toxic individual that's on your team, it basically mitigates the amount of ability and creativities that others can create within the organization. You know, they're not thinking about innovation. They're thinking about that individual that they hate dealing with. Participation, and then the high dependency on the leader. If this individual is not an assigned leader, but he has emerged as a leader, the team members will adjourn this conversation about this project they're supposed to be working on, and they will go to the CEO or the COO or the CFO, someone outside the spectrum of the immediacy of that team for which they're working. You can go to the next slide, please. So let's talk about some of the dysfunctions of a team. Within that scenario that I just posed to you, obviously there's an absence of trust within that team because no one's talking. No one's addressing the issues that they aren't even motivated to participate in the process or the problem solving. No one's talking about the lack of organizational support. They're not having those critical conversations because there's no trust within leadership. So as leaders, there are two things that we have to deal with. Number one, if it's predictive trust, that's that trust where the individual will come and talk to you about very surface things, right? I need your input on A, B, and C. But then if that leader decides to have a conversation and is very vulnerable about the issues that's happening in the organization, that's something entirely different that has to be addressed as well. We must, as leaders, demonstrate both predictive and vulnerability trust. And number two, the fear of conflict. You've heard of unhealthy conflict. What about healthy conflict, where there is a debate about the issues at hand? Ask the questions, why are we here? What problems are we looking to resolve? And how can we move forward? Because within any team, if you are working on a project and the team disperses, adjourns, dismisses, right? And you have no knowledge that you can transfer to another team project, that's a problem. You want that intellectual transferability of your skills so that you can work on another team. When you have a healthy debate, perspectives are entertained. Different types of cultural dialects that are taking place, different perspectives happen. That's where creativity is born, right there within that healthy conflict, because there is a diffusion of conversations and perspectives that's happening. And so you want to be there with that. If, given that same scenario, the lack of commitment, what happens if your team members are not participating? There's no buy-in in the process. There's no buy-in in the innovative process or product in and of itself and how you resolve those processes. You can't even mind map or put things together because people are not committed. There is no buy-in. And then, given that same scenario, the avoidance of accountability. Well, if I don't say anything, I'm not accountable. If I don't say anything, I didn't necessarily buy into the process. Implicitly, I am disagreeing with what's going on, but as long as I'm silent, I am not accountable to produce. And then finally, the inattention to results. And that's the big problem. A lot of CEOs will not look at the issues until they look at the results itself, and they're bleeding out. Because when you work for a highly competent and successful organization, on the surface, it looks very profitable, right? But you're not looking at what's happening culturally with the organization. Therefore, you're going to fail. It's like hubris born of success. Everything is going well with this corporation. What do I have to worry about? This is my brand. This is my identity. This is my career. I'm going to do fine. But no, because no one is talking about those issues, you're going to begin to see a decline in the revenue. And we want to avoid that. Next slide, please. So I've listed basically some suggestions and some attributes in terms of a trusting team. What does a trusting team look like? Number one, they admit that there are weaknesses and mistakes. Let me ask you, do you work in an organization where you can safely admit your mistakes or your weaknesses or your issues? Can you do that? Is it psychologically safe? Is it conducive for you to ask questions for growth and productivity? Or is it very threatening and you keep the conversation to yourself? What about asking for help? That is not a sign of weakness. If you're asking someone for their perspective to get to the next level so that you all can do it together, then ultimately the company will become much more profitable. Then accepting responsibility. when you're asking the questions, right? You're asking these questions, so you're going to accept the responsibility. Okay, I've asked this question. You've given me the information. I am going to accept the responsibility to go to the next level. And then giving someone the benefit of the doubt before arriving to a negative conclusion. Guess what culture we live in now? It's either yes or no, yay or nay. You're on my side or you're against me. It's a very polarizing culture. But as leaders, we have to give each other the benefit of the doubt to learn more about their perspectives, because there may be some things within their thinking that needs to be addressed. And you might learn something, honestly. Then appreciating and tap into other individuals' skills as well and their experiences. Get to know the people who are working for you. Get to know the people on the team. You might have individuals, particularly now in this COVID-19 era, that are working at home. Well, you see them at meetings and they're not participating, or maybe the camera's off, but you don't see the fact that they are trying to homeschool their 5 kids or take care of their elderly parents or have just suffered a great loss. You don't see those things. So make sure you get to know them, appreciate their experiences, and then focus your time and energy on the issues, not politics. Again, this is very polarizing. This culture is very polarizing, but you as a leader has a responsibility to focus on the important issues. And then apologies without hesitation. That's that vulnerability trust right there. To be vulnerable in front of your team members or in front of your departments, whatever it is, be vulnerable and then apologize if something was misinterpreted. Then finally, you're looking forward to other opportunities to work as a group. If the group has not transcended from the last project, and from that, this is what I mean by that, is that if you are working with a group and you want to, after the project has concluded, you do not want to work with those individuals anymore, then the group hasn't worked effectively, not at all, or efficiently at all. So it's incumbent upon you, the leaders, to look for those opportunities. Okay, next slide, please. Fear of conflict. You as a leader must be the miner of conflict. Ask the critical questions, even those questions that may appear to be uncomfortable for the individual or even uncomfortable to you. You ask those questions and because you are mining for understanding a perspective so that you can get to the next level. The second one is to coach and encourage your team members. You don't want to retreat from a healthy debate or healthy conflict, but you have to, first of all, define what healthy conflict looks like. Number one. Number two, you have to establish the boundaries. You're not personally attacking the individual, you're addressing the problems itself. Number three, there are a lot of assessment tools, behavior tools. There's the Strength Finder, there's the 360-degree assessment, this one here, leverage behavior and personality assessment tools. And this is basically to give you an understanding of the personalities for which you're working with. And then leaders must demonstrate restraint when team members are engaged in healthy conflict. We as leaders sometimes want to get in, jump in, and fix the problem because we are unhealthy. We feel very uncomfortable about the conflict. But if we recognize it as healthy conflict, there's a debate that's going on and is very spirited, we can basically encourage them to participate more in the discussion. And therefore, ultimately, there's buy-in in the process. A team that commits creates clarity around direction and priorities. Now, interesting with this statement right here, when you're looking at the attributes of a good team, the only way you will commit to the team dynamic is that you understand the criteria that is set to be a highly functioning team. There is a theoretical construct that talks about teams that are stuck within the process, which means that this team is getting to know each other, but because there are so many interpersonal conflicts, they can't move to that forming stage where they're establishing values, or the performing stage because of the fact that they're stuck within this interpersonal conflict. Make sure you as a leader navigate that, and so that everyone understands and clearly articulate back to you their understanding of the criteria. Align the entire team with common objectives. It's okay to ask the questions, why are we here? And ask the team to articulate to you, why are we here? What's your perception of why we're here? What do you see in this conversation? What do you see with this problem and how we're addressing those problems? That's the conversation you want. What about the ability to learn from mistakes? There is a gentleman called Peter Senge, S-E-N-G-E, who created this model called the learning organization. And he talks about the fact that we are all a part of the integrated sum. And so if we don't ask those critical questions and create an environment conducive for learning, no one will ask the critical questions, okay? Then take advantage of opportunities before competitors do. You have to be out there to understand what are competitors doing. Let's be innovative. Let's do more. Let's be more. And let's live out the mantra for which we if we're here to serve and we're here to produce, let's live out that mantra. Move forward without hesitation. Don't look back. Don't look back. Whatever your values are, whatever the process is, move forward with that process, and then changing directions without hesitation or guilt. The reason you have tools such as contracts, which clearly establishes your roles, your responsibilities in your assignments, and performance metrics, is because you have to constantly evaluate where you are in the process. And if it's not working, change course, but change course together and effectively. Going back to the 5 dysfunctions of the team, of course, avoidance of accountability is one that I mentioned as well. If the leader doesn't have buy-in from the team members, then ultimately the team members are not going to feel accountable to anyone. If they don't understand the roles and the responsibilities that have been assigned to them, then they're not going to be accountable. So make sure you watch that. Accountability is the glue that ties commitment to results. So here are some of the criteria for effective teams. Clear and measurable performance goals. The first thing you should do is to establish your SMART goals. SMART stands for specific, measurable, aggressive and achievable, relevant and time-bound goals. You must set those goals that should be the first thing that you establish within addressing team problems and innovative things that you'd like to accomplish. Number 2, roles and assignments accepted by the team members. Establish that contract. The contract must include the roles and responsibilities of each member. It must include a contingency plan. If some members are unperforming, it must include the leader so that the leader is aware of what the team is doing within each process. Don't wait until the end where the assignment has concluded and then you begin to complain about some areas for which you felt were inefficient, whether it's a team member being late or not being responsible for their assignments, or if they are not communicating and you're trying to communicate with them so that you can advance on and they're not responding. Those things, you have to have a contract in place so that you can establish those rules and hold people accountable. And when they sign the contract, they are committed to advancing forward. Creating a climate of trust, safety, and support. Again, create that climate that's conducive to innovation and crucial conversations and asking those uncomfortable questions. Make sure that your team members feel safe. Even when they make mistakes, they can come to you and talk about those mistakes. I've seen CEOs that will be aware or become aware of some mistake a team member has made, and it becomes time value money. Oh, let's move away from this project. Oh, well, maybe we should remove that team member without understanding the full context of what has happened. Again, open and participant communication environment. Now, when you are communicating to your teams, 2 things happen. You are sending a code and your team members are decoding what you say. Very, very important, because they are listening to the intonations of your voice. your level of attractiveness, your intelligence, how much do you know about the project, and how effective you are as a team leader. So you want to make sure that the communication is open so that when you are articulating this great vision, you're also allowing them to basically speak into the process so that you can move forward together. And that also taps into that decision making and problem solving as well. Make sure you have lines of demarcations so that you can move forward in your process. And by that, this is what I mean by this, is that if you are committed to a process and achieving this process, you have a timeline, you have the project, you have the funding, because remember, you have to justify that. Make sure that it is documented and it is efficient. Constantly evaluate the process so you can identify early in the process whether there are inefficiencies that you need to address. Supportive leadership, that's supportive leadership from the top. If you're working as a team to solve a problem and you don't have the organizational support, you don't have the support of the CEO, finance is breathing down your back because they're saying that this is too expensive, we can't do it. And the culture in and of itself is so toxic that you can't even move forward efficiently or innovatively, then that's a problem. That's going to impede on your ability to move forward as a team and to be proud of what you're doing. Constructive handling of conflict. Leaders, do not be afraid of conflict. Do not be afraid. If you have to rephrase what's going on in a very positive manner, do that. Do that so people can understand, okay, this is what we're doing. This is why we're here together as a group and want to move forward cohesively, and then allow them time to speak into the process. And then the ability to monitor performance and make needed changes. I've iterated that over and over again. You have to have a performance mechanism to monitor the process and the progress of the process and the production. If it doesn't work, then collectively the team will agree to move forward. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, for goal setting, establishing a clearly defined goal. And I'm going to go back to this. If your team members cannot articulate their responsibilities in moving the project forward, then you have a problem. That means they don't understand what's going on and how to move forward. There might be documentations that might be too technical for them to understand, or maybe even within the team environment. And I think about this, within the team environment, if there are distractions like that gentleman I talked about who's standing up and pacing, and you're trying to understand what's going on, then that's going to impede their ability to understand what it is they are there for, what's their purpose, okay? Then everything done by consensus building. Now, consensus building, you have to have a relationship with individuals to do that, right? To get to that point of agreement, you have to establish that relationship. You have to minimize the conflict within the interpersonal relationships and focus on the problems in and of itself. Move away from it. Do not make it political. It is about the issue. What about the objectives? What are you trying to achieve within this process? With this process, if we have objectives that we can achieve, and basically you have to do two things. From a micro perspective, you have the objectives in place. So someone in finance who's represented within this team meeting might have a goal. Someone in engineering might have a goal too. But that's from the micro level. From a macro level, ultimately, we have to understand that we are going forward together, and this is how we do it. Then your evaluation and feedback system so that the team can monitor the attainment of the goals. Everyone should have access on the progress in and of itself, and that should be articulated by the leader. So teams, together, everyone achieves more. If we address the 5 dysfunctions of the team, the absence of trust, the lack of accountability, the lack of commitment, the fear of conflict, and the inattention to results, then we effectively can create a very high performing team. But if we have individuals that are working not collectively and not moving forward together, but trying to figure out, okay, what's my role and how can this be an opportunity for me to advance my career, not thinking about the team or the process itself, then that's going to definitely diminish the effectiveness of the team.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Love, for your time today and your expertise. We have a few minutes until we're at the 30-minute mark. So now we have, we'll just spend a couple of minutes going through our Q&A. As a reminder, if you have any questions, take a look at the bottom of your screen and you will see a Q&A icon. Go ahead and type those in there and we will make sure that Dr. Love gets them addressed. But before that, it looks like we already had some questions come in during the registration part of this webinar. So Dr. Love, I've got a few for you. This person says that it looks like remote work will continue for many beyond the pandemic. I know myself, I think it's going to go on for even longer than that. So what added advice do you have for members and managers of largely or like entirely remote teams? How might they contribute to high performance teams while they're working from their own home?
Communication is key. It's very, very important to keep everyone involved in the process in and of itself. Because as I indicated before, there are so many distractions. I mean, we see each other's faces, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes for each of the workers. And so we have to make sure that we are constantly communicating with them, do a wellness check, because that's very, very important. Understand the perspectives of the team members, understand what's going on with them in their family relationships or anything that's important to them. It's incumbent upon the leaders to understand where they are and what they can do, what the leaders can do to help alleviate some of the challenges. I've had team members who decide to turn off their cameras, or they will mute, or they will mute the microphone, and I don't know if they're engaged or not. It is important to see the faces of the team members. It's important to get their input. So communication is key, and creating a community of individuals so that they can understand that they are all a part of the integrated sum and they will go forward together effectively.
Great, thank you. Those are some great tips. Now, this next question, I know I can personally relate to. This person says that they are a manager who has a hard time delegating. And if they want something done right, they generally do it themselves. So how can they improve their ability to let go and delegate better and maybe trust in their team members a little bit more?
Oh, okay. So this is a great question because I've had to address that issue with myself very early in my professional career, where I wanted to do everything myself because I knew that my insignia was on it and it was going to be right. It is very tough. But we have to understand the team's ability to achieve the goals. We have to trust in our team members, create opportunities for them. If you are unsure about their skills, create opportunities for them to prove themselves, and make them part of the conversation. That's the only effective way I know in terms of delegating, because if I'm not delegating to my other coworkers, that's a sign that I don't trust them. And we never want that, because ultimately you're going to lose those individuals and they will find another environment where they feel valued. So make sure you're communicating and make sure you create opportunities for them to achieve. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Love. I think we're at time, so we're going to wrap things up, but thank you again for your expertise. Before we let everybody go, I wanted to remind everyone that Judson University is a corporate partner of your employer, and we offer associate, bachelor, and master's degrees. So whatever your career goals are, we have a degree for you. You can learn more about these degrees by visiting judsondegree.com or giving us a call at 888-741-4981. And we do have some start dates coming up. Now, we have associate classes starting in November. I know it's 12 days away, but you can still squeeze in if you don't have a college degree and you really want to get started. And then we have bachelor's and master's degrees starting again next year. But really, what we want to do is make sure that we're here to help you advance in your career. So if you want to give our team a call or visit our site to learn more, we would certainly appreciate it. But other than that, thank you again, Dr. Love, for your time. And it was a pleasure hearing from you. And I hope that this was helpful to all that attended. So thank you and have a nice day.